Pregame.com.
And the boys are back. Third of four videos on pregame.tv. Ken Thomson, Dave Cokin. Dave, sometimes I scratch my head and I wonder. I say, okay, the sharps, the squares, who's got this, who's got what. But San Diego coming off a monumental meltdown against Arizona, blowing a Monday night game, then a short week basically to get ready for the defending Super Bowl champs who had a lengthy rest because they opened up on a Thursday against Green Bay. So San Diego coming back home, and I know it's week 2, but it's kind of like a must-win. They don't want to get out of the gate 0-2. We know only 13% make it to the postseason as far as that scenario goes. But again, Seattle coming in well-rested, but we know they're not the best road team. But why was all the money going on San Diego?
Well, I think it was as much situational as anything else. Look, Seattle's probably going to have a Super Bowl hangover because everybody else does. They played very well in the first game, and the personnel there is really outstanding. But I'll tell you this, San Diego, I believe, I thought the line was too high from this standpoint. San Diego's a top 6 football team, in my opinion. Now, Ryan Matthews is hurt, but this is still an outstanding squad. And you're talking about a team that, off that loss to Arizona, where they just blew the football game. That was reminiscent of what happened in 2013 on too many occasions with the Chargers. And I think they were just absolutely bound and determined not to let it happen again. They didn't fear Richard Sherman. It's not like, this talk, they burned Sherman. No, they didn't.
Right.
They completed 3 passes on him, and none of them were scores. They weren't big plays. Sherman's still fantastic. But San Diego's a really good football team, and if they can get performances out of their defense this year, I think the offense is good enough to carry them not only to the playoffs, but maybe to a couple of playoff wins. I think they're a dark horse Super Bowl possibility.
And a key cog on the offensive line, Hartwick was banged
that's a big loss.
That was a big loss. So a lot of people thinking, all right, Seattle, with that pressure, is going to be able to get in on Phillip Rivers. Rivers was very solid. And Donald Brown is a guy for my Colts last year that stepped up big time, and into the postseason, he's going to be the guy that now has that assignment to replace Ryan Matthews.
Yeah, look, and what is Ryan Matthews worth from a pure numbers standpoint? Probably about a half point. And if you're saying, well, no, it can't be worth more than that. If you go back to last week and look at the matchup between the Vikings and the Patriots, the line's 3. Peterson goes out, it gets adjusted to 6. Guess where it ended up? 3. Right. Now, I know what the result was. The Patriots squashed them, but that wasn't because Adrian Peterson wasn't out there. In fact, Adrian Peterson's backup, his replacement, had a really good game, scored the 1 touchdown, and I think had about 90 yards in total offense, so he had a pretty good game. They lost the game because of a disaster on special teams that turned the whole football game. I think it was a competitive game, and all of a sudden you block field goal 7 the other way, and that's it, Katie bar the door. So Ryan Matthews is worth something. Maybe a half point, maybe even a point, but not more than that. And a mistake people will make is reading too much into that. Nevertheless, I don't think the injuries has anything to do with it. It's a terrible spot for San Diego.
Yeah,
they are coming off this massive, big game against the defending champions. Now they got to go all the way across country, and these aren't the Buffalo Bills we're used to seeing the last few years. This team looks good right now, and you talk about a fan base that is just over the top, revved up.
Right.
Woo. They're excited in Buffalo.
No, they should be, too. They have the owner, Pagula, that owns the Buffalo Sabres, going to keep the boys there in town. They're 2-0. Somehow, some way, they got the win against the Bears, pulled that off. And then Brian Blessing, our common buddy, says that the biggest game for Buffalo at home is Miami.
Yeah.
Unless you're from there, you really don't realize that from the outside looking in. They got the W. They're 2-0. What about Buffalo now waiting on San Diego? Would they have a letdown after beating Miami?
And that's the worry, because there is a stat out there, which I actually became aware of today. And I'm not a trend guy, so I don't care.
Right.
It's not going to change my opinion. But I guess when the Bills have beaten Miami, they're an absolute disaster in the next game. But the Bills, for all these years, have been a bad football team. They haven't been good since the Super Bowl years.
Right.
That's a long time ago.
It is.
Okay? I mean, what is that, 20 years? No, that stuff doesn't matter to me. The current Bills team is getting more confident by the game. C.J. Manuel looks pretty good. You've got a very explosive wide receiver in Sammy Watkins. The defense is rock solid. This is simply a better football team than it's been in a long time, and I don't think the 2-0 is a fluke. I think this is a team that's going to make some noise and possibly make a run at a playoff spot. I'm not putting them in the Super Bowl, but they're a lot better than they've been. And for the Chargers, they can say all the right things, and I think they're a well-coached football team. And again, I'm very high on this team. It's still a really lousy scheduling spot.
There you go. All right, well, going all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast to take on E.J. Manuel and the Buffalo Bills, San Diego Chargers. Dave Cokin, your free play. Let's go ahead. Let's make it official.
You know, measuring home field advantage in the National Football League, there's some definite variance. It always cracks me up when I'll see somebody say, well, you're giving 3 points for the home field. What? You're going to tell me that Jacksonville's home field is worth the same as, say, New England's home field? No, it's not, okay? And right now, the Buffalo Bills' home field advantage, even with the weather being fine at this time of year, just think about what it could be in November, but even with the weather being okay right now, I think the Bills are at least a 4 or a 5 point edge at home. They are so excited there. I don't think there's going to be a letdown. I think there's going to be a latching on to that momentum that they gained not only from the first game where they won in overtime in Chicago. You might say that in some ways that was a fortunate win. There was nothing fortunate about their win last week against the Dolphins. They kicked Miami's teeth in that football game. San Diego is in a really difficult scheduling spot. I think the Chargers are a better football team than the Buffalo Bills, even without Ryan Matthews. But scheduling dictates a lot of things that take place in the NFL, and the better team doesn't always win because of it. I think this is a classic example of it. Fired up Bills team staying at home against the San Diego team coming off a win against the Super Bowl champions and having to travel cross country. I think the Bills are going to win this football game. Not a lot of value in the number. It's 2. I think it could very well go to 3. Nevertheless, the Bills minus the points, my choice.
Yeah, Dave, you know, when you look at the San Diego Charger team, you get a performance from Antonio Gates. He looked like he was in his heyday that game against Seattle.
He was great. The Chargers were fantastic last week. And the Chargers, you could argue, have been, well, they didn't play well in the first half against Arizona, but then put together a great third quarter in that game, just dominated, and then found a way to screw it up. You got a bad snap from center, it was a good snap from center that Rivers mishandled, and a couple of other plays, and all of a sudden they walk out of Arizona with a loss. They couldn't stop Carson Palmer from running on a 3rd and 11.
Real.
Come on, it's Carson Palmer. The guy's not, he's not exactly a speed merchant out there. That's the San Diego Chargers that we saw last year, who messed games up in the fourth quarter on a regular basis. They should have been a playoff team last year, and they weren't. I'm not ready to say that they're over that yet just because they played well against Seattle, and it wouldn't surprise me if they have a real battle with the Bills here, but in the fourth quarter, find a way not to win the game.
Yeah, it was unreal how San Diego made the playoffs after basically looking like they were left for dead. A couple weeks left in the season. They're the only team, really, though, Dave, that plays Denver well in Denver, although KC gave them a game last week. But San Diego's not intimidated by the Broncos.
And what I should have said was should have made the playoffs easier than they did.
Right.
I thought the Chargers underachieved last year. As much as I think McCoy had a really tough task in rebuilding the mental strength of this team because, let's face it, the Norv Turner years were not good.
No.
And I think he accomplished that, but they still were finding ways to screw games up, special teams mistakes, fourth quarter melts. They had another one in the first week. I think it was really vital for them to get through last week's game and not blow it, which I thought they might do. They didn't, and that's going to bode well for them down the road, but I still think this is too tough a spot for them.
There you go. So you have it from Dave. He likes going against San Diego. Take Buffalo to go to 3-0 on the season, and won't that make that Bills fan base pretty happy? Meanwhile, revenge for Denver. Can they get it? They got it in the exhibition game in Denver. Now they've got to go to Seattle, home of the defending Super Bowl champions, like Dave says, coming off the loss in San Diego. That'll be my play, the 4th and final pick of the videos here. Ken Thomson, Dave Cokin. We'll get it to you right after these, I was going to say right after these words, but we don't have a sponsor. So. Hey, plug Mastriani's.
It's a good spot.
It's a
best veal in town.
It's good stuff. All right, Ken Thomson, Dave Cokin. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up on pregame.tv. RJ, I love that one.